2 letters, 3 letters. FBI, CIA. You have heard these acronyms 1,000 times, in movies, in news reports, in whispered conspiracy theories at family dinners. They show up whenever something goes wrong, whenever something needs investigating, whenever the government needs to project power, either at home or abroad. But here is something that surprised me when I started researching this. Most people have no idea what actually separates these two agencies. They blur together into some vague notion of government agents in dark suits doing secret things. And honestly, that confusion is not entirely the public's fault. Both agencies have spent decades cultivating an air of mystery around their operations. So today, I want to cut through the fog. I want to explain using actual documentation and publicly available records what the FBI does, what the CIA does, and most importantly, where the line between them falls. Because that line matters. It matters for civil liberties, it matters for national security, and it matters for understanding how power actually works in the United States. I am Arthur Scott, and this is a comparison you have probably never seen done properly. Let me start with the older of the two agencies, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. It was born in 1908, almost 40 years before the CIA even existed. The story begins with President Theodore Roosevelt and his Attorney General Charles Bonaparte. They faced a problem. The Department of Justice needed investigators, but it had to borrow them from other agencies like the Secret Service. Bonaparte wanted his own team. Roosevelt agreed. There is actually a funny footnote in FBI history. When someone asked Bonaparte how he planned to recruit these investigators, he supposedly joked that they should have men shoot at each other and whoever survives gets the job. He was kidding, probably. The Bureau of Investigation, as it was initially called, started with 34 employees. 34 people to cover an entire nation. Today, that number has grown to over 37,000. Let me give you the current figures because they matter for understanding the scale of what we are talking about. As of the fiscal year 2025 budget request, the FBI employs approximately 37,083 people. That breaks down into 13,623 special agents, 3,337 intelligence analysts, and just over 20,000 professional staff including scientists, linguists, and IT specialists. Their budget request for 2025 was $11.3 billion. Billion with a B. The FBI operates from its headquarters in Washington, D.C., maintains 56 field offices in major American cities, over 350 smaller resident agencies across the country, and roughly 60 offices in foreign countries called legal attaché offices. Now here is what the FBI actually does. The FBI is fundamentally a law enforcement agency. They investigate federal crimes, they can make arrests, they can execute search warrants, they can bring people before federal courts. Their jurisdiction covers an enormous range of criminal activity. Terrorism, both domestic and international when it touches American soil. Counterintelligence, meaning catching foreign spies operating inside the United States. Cybercrime, public corruption, civil rights violations, organized crime, white-collar crime, violent crime that crosses state lines. If you rob a bank, the FBI might investigate because bank robbery is a federal crime. If you kidnap someone and cross state lines, FBI. If you hack into computer systems, FBI. If a local politician is taking bribes, FBI. The key word here is federal. The FBI investigates violations of federal law. They do not replace local police. They do not have some magical authority to push aside local cops and take over any investigation they want. That is a Hollywood invention. In reality, the FBI works alongside state and local law enforcement. They bring resources and expertise that smaller departments might lack. They coordinate across jurisdictions, but they are bound by the same constitutional protections as any other law enforcement agency. They need warrants. They need probable cause. They operate within the American legal system. One more critical point about the FBI. Since September 11, 2001, counterterrorism has become their top priority. They still do all the other work, but preventing terrorist attacks on American soil is now mission number one. This shift reshaped the entire organization. They recruited more intelligence analysts. They improved information sharing. They built relationships with international partners. In January 2024, the FBI announced a major operation where they identified a network of hundreds of compromised routers used by a Chinese government-sponsored hacking group known as Volt Typhoon. This botnet enabled China to conduct reconnaissance and network exploitation against American critical infrastructure, including communications, energy, transportation, and water sectors. Working with partners, the FBI ran a court-authorized operation that significantly disrupted this threat. That is the modern FBI, still chasing bank robbers and mobsters when necessary, but increasingly focused on nation-state cyber threats and terrorism prevention. The FBI, in short, is America's domestic investigative force. They catch criminals, they stop terrorists, they protect the homeland from threats within its borders. The CIA is younger. It was created in 1947, born from the ashes of World War II and the shock of Pearl Harbor. Before Pearl Harbor, the United States had no centralized foreign intelligence agency. Military intelligence existed. The State Department gathered information. But there was no single organization responsible for collecting, analyzing, and delivering intelligence about foreign threats to the president. Pearl Harbor exposed that gap in devastating fashion. The attack killed over 2,400 Americans and pulled the nation into World War. In the aftermath, many asked how the military had been caught so completely off guard. The answer in part was institutional failure. Information existed in fragments scattered across different agencies. Nobody was connecting the dots. After the war, President Harry Truman signed the National Security Act of 1947. That law created the CIA. It also created the National Security Council and unified the military under the Department of Defense. The entire national security architecture of modern America traces back to that single piece of legislation. So what does the CIA actually do? The CIA is an intelligence agency, not a law enforcement agency. This distinction is critical. The CIA cannot arrest anyone. They have no law enforcement powers. They cannot execute search warrants or bring criminal charges. What they can do is gather intelligence about foreign countries, foreign leaders, foreign militaries, foreign threats. They analyze that intelligence, and they deliver it to policymakers, primarily the President and the National Security Council. The CIA headquarters sits in Langley, Virginia, at a facility officially called the George Bush Center for Intelligence. People in the intelligence world often just call it Langley. Unlike the FBI, the CIA does not publicly disclose how many people it employs or exactly how much money it spends. Their official website explicitly states that neither the number of employees nor the size of the agency budget can be publicly disclosed. Estimates from various sources suggest somewhere between 20 and 25,000 employees, but that number is speculative. What we do know is that the CIA receives funding through something called the National Intelligence Program. For fiscal year 2025, the total National Intelligence Program budget was $73.3 billion. That money funds not just the CIA, but also portions of the NSA, NGA, and other intelligence agencies. The CIA-specific slice of that pie remains classified. The agency is organized into several directorates. The Directorate of Analysis produces intelligence assessments. The Directorate of Operations conducts clandestine human intelligence collection, meaning they run spies. The Directorate of Science and Technology develops gadgets and technical collection methods. The Directorate of Digital Innovation focuses on cyber capabilities. The Directorate of Support handles logistics and administration. As of 2025, the current Director of National Intelligence is Tulsi Gabbard, who oversees the entire intelligence community. The CIA Director reports to the DNI and manages the agency day-to-day operations. One unit deserves special mention, the Special Activities Center. This is the CIA paramilitary arm. These are the people who conduct covert operations, the kind of activities the United States government can plausibly deny. During the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, Special Activities Center officers were often the first Americans on the ground working with local forces before conventional military units arrived. The CIA also does something that generates considerable controversy. They conduct covert action to influence events in foreign countries. This can mean anything from funding pro-American political parties to training rebel groups to historically participating in coups against governments deemed hostile to American interests. The 1953 coup in Iran, the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba, support for the Contras in Nicaragua, drone strikes against terrorist targets. All of these involved CIA covert action. This is where the agency reputation for moral ambiguity comes from. The CIA has done things in the name of national security that many Americans would find troubling if they knew the full details. They have also prevented attacks, gathered intelligence that saved lives, and provided early warning of genuine threats. The CIA, in short, is America's foreign intelligence service. They gather secrets, they analyze threats, they conduct operations abroad. They do not arrest people, they inform decisions. So now we arrive at the question everyone actually wants answered. What is the real difference between these two agencies? It comes down to one word: jurisdiction. The FBI operates primarily inside the United States. The CIA operates primarily outside the United States. The FBI enforces laws. The CIA gathers intelligence. The FBI can arrest you. The CIA cannot. The FBI investigates American citizens who commit federal crimes. The CIA is legally prohibited from spying on American citizens, except in very specific circumstances involving foreign intelligence activities. Let me make this concrete with an example. Imagine a terrorist plot. A foreign terrorist organization is planning an attack against the United States. While that plot is being developed overseas, the CIA is responsible for gathering intelligence about it. They might recruit a source inside the organization, they might intercept communications, they might track the movement of operatives. The moment any of those operatives enter the United States jurisdiction shifts to the FBI. The FBI takes over because now we are talking about a potential crime on American soil. The FBI can conduct surveillance within the legal framework of American law. They can obtain warrants, they can make arrests, they can build a criminal case. This handoff, this transition from CIA to FBI, is one of the most critical junctures in counterterrorism. And this is exactly where things went wrong before September 11th. The September 11th Commission report released in 2004 found that information was not being shared properly between agencies. The CIA had intelligence about two of the hijackers who would later participate in the attacks. That information was not adequately communicated to the FBI. The FBI had other pieces of the puzzle that were never connected. The Commission described this as a failure to connect the dots, not because the dots did not exist, they did, but because institutional barriers, bureaucratic turf wars, and inadequate communication systems prevented anyone from seeing the full picture. After September 11th, significant reforms were implemented. The Director of National Intelligence position was created to oversee the entire intelligence community. Information sharing improved dramatically. Joint terrorism task forces brought FBI and CIA officers together with other agencies in the same rooms working the same cases. But tensions remain. These are two very different organizational cultures. FBI agents are trained as law enforcement officers. They think in terms of evidence, prosecution, and convictions. CIA officers are trained as intelligence collectors. They think in terms of sources, tradecraft, and plausible deniability. Getting these two cultures to work together effectively remains an ongoing challenge even today. I want to spend a few minutes talking about what it actually takes to work for these organizations. Because the differences in their missions translate into very different hiring requirements and workplace cultures. For the FBI, you must be a United States citizen. You must be between 23 and 36 years old when you apply. You need a 4-year degree from an accredited university. You need at least 2 years of professional work experience, though 3 years is preferred for most positions. The FBI looks for candidates with specific skills: accounting, computer science, foreign languages especially Arabic, Chinese, Farsi, Korean, Russian and Spanish, law, military experience, physical sciences. You will undergo extensive background checks, a polygraph examination, medical and psychological evaluations, physical fitness tests, including a timed 300-meter sprint, push-ups, sit-ups, and a 1.5-mile run. If you make it through all of that, you spend approximately 20 weeks at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. There you learn investigative techniques, firearms handling, defensive tactics, and the legal framework within which the FBI operates. FBI agents can tell their families what they do. They can discuss their work in general terms. Their identity is not secret. They carry credentials and identify themselves as FBI when executing their duties. For the CIA, requirements vary more depending on the specific position. Not everyone at the CIA is a spy. Many are analysts, scientists, engineers, linguists, or support staff. For the clandestine service, the operations officers who actually run sources and conduct covert activities, the requirements are stringent. United States citizenship is mandatory. A college degree is typically required. Foreign language skills are highly valued. Travel experience and cultural adaptability matter enormously. The CIA conducts thorough background investigations, multiple polygraph examinations, psychological evaluations, medical screenings. This process can take over a year from initial application to final offer. If you are selected for operations, you undergo training at a classified facility, often referred to simply as the farm. The length and content of this training are not publicly disclosed. Here is the critical difference in lifestyle. CIA operations officers cannot tell people what they actually do. Not their friends, often not even their families in detail. The CIA website explicitly states that friends, family, and others may be interested to learn you are an applicant or employee, and that it is in your best interest not to reveal this information. This creates an unusual life. You carry a cover story. You might tell people you work for the State Department or some other government agency. You maintain this fiction for your entire career and possibly beyond. Former FBI agents often describe the job as stressful but rewarding, with long hours and time away from family being the primary complaints. Former CIA officers describe something more existential: the weight of secrets, the moral complexity of their work, the isolation that comes from living a double life. One former CIA officer, when asked if it was all worth it, replied with something that stuck with me. "I ask myself the same question every day. Was any of it worth it?" Neither job is glamorous in the way movies suggest. Both involve enormous amounts of paperwork, bureaucracy, and mundane tasks between moments of genuine significance. So let me pull this together. The FBI is America's domestic investigative and law enforcement arm. They catch criminals. They stop terrorists on American soil. They operate within the American legal system with all its protections and constraints. Their budget is public. Their workforce numbers are public. Their director testifies before Congress regularly. The CIA is America's foreign intelligence service. They gather secrets abroad. They analyze threats. They conduct covert operations. They have no law enforcement powers. Much of what they do remains classified. Their budget is hidden within larger appropriations. Their workforce size is officially unknown. The FBI can arrest you. The CIA cannot. The FBI operates mainly inside the United States. The CIA operates mainly outside. The FBI thinks like cops. The CIA thinks like spies. These are different tools designed for different purposes. Neither is better or worse in any absolute sense. Both have made mistakes. Both have achieved successes that the public may never fully know about. What matters is understanding that they exist for different reasons, operate under different rules, and serve different functions within the broader national security apparatus. When you see these acronyms in headlines, you now know what they actually mean. You know what distinguishes them. You know the legal and institutional boundaries that separate their work. And perhaps most importantly, you understand why that separation exists. In a democracy, power must be divided. The ability to spy must be separated from the ability to arrest. Foreign operations must be distinguished from domestic law enforcement. These boundaries exist not to create bureaucratic inefficiency, but to protect citizens from concentrated power. The FBI and CIA, for all their flaws and controversies, represent this principle in action. Two agencies, different missions, different rules, working sometimes imperfectly toward the common goal of national security. I am Arthur Scott. This has been FBI versus CIA. What actually makes them different? Now you know.